The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Café. This is the United Podcast Network.
And welcome to the Writer's Block Podcast. I'm Mandra Biscrenay, and I believe that everyone has a story to tell. What's yours?
Deborah Monk, empowering you to find your creative voice.
And I'm Shelley Devlin, inspiring you to find your why. Last week on the Writer's Block, we welcomed guest author Brian Casey, the author of Good Cop, Good Cop, and learned and discussed his writing process and what that book was about. Today, we're going to examine the basic building blocks of our craft. We're going to talk about words, and how to make each one count and how to make things sound better. So we're going to dive into how to write cliches, emotions, and dialogue better.
Girls.
So cliches,
Yes.
right?
Shell, that's all you.
I'm telling you. My editor just, I had a line in my book that said, the salon is always a bag of tricks. And her comment was, it's an overused cliche. Can you come up with something a little bit more original, right?
Or a little less cliche.
A little less cliche. But I was like, I struggled with it because, when it's
Because
all
it's
about
a
default. We all go to that well-known cliche so easily.
Right.
But
You know what I mean?
But sometimes the cliche is what everybody relates to, too. So I struggle with, so I guess it's not using a lot of cliches in your writing. Right? Because then you're not original. You're just stealing it from everybody else. But some of them I came up with was funny because it's cliche sayings, right? Like, all that glitters isn't gold. Don't get your knickers in a twist, right? So those were all
one. My
sayings,
grandmother said
right?
that one. Yeah.
I know, right? I changed it to don't get your panties in a bunch,
But that's
it's the same thing.
That's the modern version.
That's the modern version,
cliche,
right?
So did you come up with something better for Bag of Tricks?
I could not, because I talk a lot about magic in my book, about the magic of being a hairdresser, the magic cape, creating that magic for the clients that I thought Bag of Tricks.
Yeah.
But wait, I just had a thought. Okay, do you got one for me?
Yes.
Shell, what do hairdressers have? Like, what's
That cart.
their caddy or their like salon bag that you could
Yeah.
A tool
instead
belt.
of a bag of tricks?
Yeah.
What is like what you have your brushes and scissors and all that kind of stuff in?
Yeah, what else
Still
could you
doesn't
pull
sound
rabbits
fun.
out of?
Right. Exactly.
a hat of
A
tricks?
hat of tricks. No, it's a caddy of tools. That sounds dumb.
No, but like
Because it's caboodles.
A caboodle?
A
Yeah, don't
caboodle.
that has all like your hair and makeup stuff.
Yeah. But it's still not like a magician's bag of tricks.
No.
It's more about the magician, not about
Right. And
what
it's about
you
what
keep your
he's going
tools
to
at.
do with
Beautician is a magician,
and it's what he's going to do with it. So Shelley was away when she was writing this. It doesn't matter where you were, but so she texted me and said, give me another way of saying bag of tricks. So I just texted her, but without really knowing the context. So I think what you have to do is what are you trying to say?
Or you could stop wasting any more time on this and just tell the editor, this is the one I'm picking, and then just move on.
Jonathan, I like the way you think because that's what I did with it. I said, I'm moving on, except we're doing this podcast on cliches. So
Fair
it
enough.
came up, but I was like, yep, no, check. I'm leaving it. Bag of tricks, it is.
Okay.
Okay, so
done.
sometimes you can choose to keep your cliche.
Right.
Absolutely.
But in that particular case, it fits so well. It fits the
does.
motif of the book.
It does.
Right.
It does. So there.
So you're keeping that one. All
So
right.
then other cliches I came up with, the describing time, only time will tell, in the nick of time, lost track of time,
Oh, that right.
so there are different categories of the cliches, the sayings, describing time, describing people, as old as the hills, fit as a fiddle, without a care in the world. So it was interesting when I started digging into the cliches on how many different ways to say it.
So
say it.
our show here today is we're saying words matter, and we're examining cliches and
How do we make them better?
Right. Okay.
Because cliches technically are saying that the writer is being unoriginal.
or lazy.
Yes.
Or lazy, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
Don't cry over spilled milk. Every cloud has a silver lining.
Right.
But some of them really, like Jonathan said, fit the story. You just can't
They
use a bunch
do.
of them. One on occasion.
Right.
Get
but
out of jail free card.
Okay, ships passing in the night.
Yes.
Can we come up with a better one for that?
So basically,
Well, it
that's
depends on what my
saying
story is, but
right. But if you never see each other, or if there's distance,
Two bodies walking by each other in a cloud.
yes. Well, listen. Okay. Well, how's this one?
It's not that cliche because no one ever says it. That's the whole thing about cliches is that they're overused expressions. You can't become a cliche until you're overused.
That's right. But you have to get the same feeling across
Yes.
without using something that's been so redundant.
okay. So tell me, how do you do 2 ships in a night?
Okay, so here's kind of two. One that you
Can't
mentioned.
take mine. Don't take
it's
my
not.
line.
I can't take your line?
No.
Oh, you have that for
Deb,
later?
why don't you say your line then?
No, well, what my job to do
Wait,
today was
let me
give it-
finish
yes,
this one.
Don't take my zip
I
code line.
won't. Okay, I won't. I won't.
Okay.
I was going there, but I won't. So think of two people like passing each other's ships in the night, but they're parents, right?
Okay.
They're the sole passengers on an all-night subway, crossing paths just briefly at the turnstile of exhaustion.
Well, that's amazing,
That is
Mandra.
good, Mandra.
God.
Or
The turnstile
or
of
you could just say
exhaustion.
2 ships passing in the
Yeah,
night
but you
and
don't
move on.
Yeah, but you
No.
you can't
No,
because your
it's not
editors.
as powerful.
It's not
No,
as powerful.
that
And
was
and
amazing.
it actually kind of zeroed in on not just 2 ships passing in the night, but now you know they're tired.
I
weary,
felt more for the
like-
Showing,
characters.
not
Yeah.
telling for sure.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that was good. That was good.
Yes.
Good
Kudos,
job.
Mandra.
Thank you. I'm all done
Good
now.
job.
You can't.
That was my
Your
hippie
applause?
snap. Yeah.
Do you want to do yours?
Oh, my turn? Okay. So what my job was today, and we were talking about words matter, my job was to spy on conversations. So to hear how people describe things and pick up the way they said things that were good.
Like,
Did I say like a lot?
no, I'm just saying that's what the new thing is right now. The last 5 years is the overuse of the word like. So
Yes. Well, that's
Oh.
been, I feel like 30 years.
Yeah. I think when I was young, I remember my mother correcting me. So I was having this one I didn't have to spy on. It was a conversation I was having with a friend, and we were talking about the love languages and how one of the love languages is touch. So if that happens to be, and I was saying that was one of my love languages, definitely touch. And what she said is, oh, that's definitely not one of ours. John and I sleep in separate zip codes in the same bed.
See, I love that.
And I
love
thought,
this,
wow.
sleeping in separate zip codes.
Yes, in the same bed. So you can just see 2 people. She wasn't saying their relationship's bad, just that that's not one of their ways of communicating. So you could just see them. I don't even know what size their bed is, but I could just envision the biggest queen or king bed.
California king.
And that they're each on their own side, and almost like the blankets kind of tuft down between them and create an extra wide barrier.
Right.
So I thought the way she said that was amazing.
that was pretty good. And maybe if enough people read that, they'll also use it. And that
And it will become a cliche.
It
Yeah.
will.
And of course, I changed the name John to John.
Yeah, you didn't really change that.
Well, meaning I don't want to give anyone away. Okay, so then the next thing I heard was I was at Starbucks, and I heard kind of a 2 girls. They're about I don't know 13 and 15 years old, and they were talking about a party they were going to and how they were hoping this boy was going to show up. And one girl said, "I feel like I have a bipolar squirrel in my belly searching for a nut."
Wow.
And so I thought you could feel her. She's kind of hopeful, the bipolar, like she's hopeful and nervous at the
I
same
see
time.
Deb pick up her computer, all her papers, and move closer to those 2 girls
I didn't
and get
need
out
to.
her pen
And her
start
Post-its.
taking notes with her Post-its.
Already had it out.
That was good.
Or worse,
yes.
when she hears something really good, she'll say, "Can you say that again?"
Yes.
Yes.
Imagine how creepy that would be for a 13-year-old girl to have this lady looking. Excuse me.
Yes.
Lady.
First of all, I was eavesdropping. Second of all, I'd like you to repeat that
Yes.
last word for word so I can write it down.
And yeah. Then another one, Rick Peoples from my.
Oh, your other
who's
group.
been,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
He said he's been on a diet, and he said, I got a restraining
Sorry,
order.
Rick.
He admits it. I got a restraining order from Little Debbie, but she's ignoring it. So you could tell
great.
his diet was at the edge of collapsing. Like he just wasn't going to be able to hold out much longer.
Yeah.
And then this was a line that from a long time ago, probably 20 years ago, I went to the Barnes & Noble in Nashua, and there was a writing group that was meeting up and I'm going to say this line because I hope whoever wrote this will reach out to me at deb@deborahmonk.com, because this line has stuck with me for over 20 years. Pregnancy becomes her like a grape becomes a raisin.
Oh my
And you
God.
like that?
know
I
if
didn't get it.
I don't-
All of us made faces.
Yeah.
Well, when you say the word pregnancy becomes her, you're thinking, oh, he's going to say she's glowing, or it suits her. She's radiant. But a grape becoming a raisin.
No,
a grape,
it's fantastic. I think it's fantastic.
It is fantastic
It's
because
horrible.
it's horrible.
It's
so
but it's
good.
fantastic.
Yes,
The imagery
is so good.
it's powerful.
Because a grape is what's plump, and a
doesn't
grape
make
becoming a
me
raisin.
happy
It's
at
not
all.
supposed to make you happy.
Yeah, when it starts, you're thinking grape becomes wine. We're going to have a party.
Yes.
And then it's like becomes a raisin. Oh my God, she's going to be a shriveled old lady.
You don't know what it means.
horrible.
But that it's
That's exactly what it means.
it's that the pregnancy is not becoming
Shriveling
her.
is in the eye of the beholder, and I
Yeah.
beholded
That's
shriveling.
right. Yeah, I really hope that person reaches out to Deb.
The writer. Yes.
That'd be great.
20
'em on.
years later.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 words.
9 words.
A sentence that I've remembered.
Affected you for 20 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can't tell you what I had for lunch yesterday.
It's been waiting
Wow.
to come onto a podcast
It
for
was a
20
shake.
years.
So whoever wrote that, I would have given
my.
you credit if I could remember your name.
Oh, gosh.
So that was
All
my
right.
homework. I had a blast
Okay.
spying
Well,
on people. As you can
Yes,
see.
I think you did.
Yeah.
And you remembered things from 20 years ago.
I spied 20 years back. Yeah.
Yeah. So part of what I was charged with doing was taking some emotions and saying them in different ways that weren't so cliche. So I was really kind of stuck, and I decided I would just ask someone, well, what's a different way that you would say, explain nervous, or lonely? And since the only person in my house at the time was my 7-year-old son, I decided I'd ask him and see what he came up
This
with.
is a double-edged sword.
It really is.
Love it.
So this, nervous, a lot of times we say
Butterflies.
butterflies in your stomach, that sort of thing. That is so overused. So from the 7-year-old, he said, nervous. That's a tough one. It's like chills all down your body and you don't know what's going to happen. I thought that was
I'm
so
telling you.
good.
Darby's going to be, he is already somebody, but he's definitely going to be a somebody.
He should be listening to this podcast.
Well, he's at school.
Yeah, but it's on all the time.
I know.
He should become a writer.
And but
should
what I
become a
love that
writer.
he did was he got into his body,
Yeah.
like way into his body with not just the butterflies in the stomach, but how the whole body feels and that anticipation of not knowing what's going to
Which
happen.
is usually what you're nervous about.
Exactly. You don't know
Right.
how it's going to all play
Right.
out.
Or you wouldn't be nervous.
Right.
I'm going to be great or I'm going to suck. Either way, you're not supposed to be nervous about if you already know.
the plan's written. So then the other one that I had him do was lonely because I thought, standing alone, there's a lot of imagery about just that lone person. So that gets overused. But what he said was, you feel invisible because no one notices you. And you try to convince them to make you feel better.
That kid kills me.
I know. And I thought that
No
was
fair. You're not allowed to do homework with your kid anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't know my kid would be better than half the stuff I was coming up with. I was coming up with just, I don't know, crap. So I
Does
asked
Darby
him.
have a cell phone yet? Can I get his number?
Heck no.
Heck no.
Heck no. But yeah, so
Heck
I thought,
no, he doesn't have a cell phone, or heck no, she
Shelley
can't
can't
get
have his number.
Actually, that we need clarification.
Aunt
does
Shelley.
not have a cell phone
We can
number.
take him
But
to the tattoo shop and
Yes.
chat about some writing.
we can bring him to a writer's group and you can ask him these questions.
Okay. I'm looking forward to it.
But I thought just asking someone else, and even a child who
It's going to
Hasn't-
simplify
he's
it.
going to simplify it, and he doesn't know the cliches.
Right.
You ask an adult, how would you describe nervous? Oh, it's those butterflies in your stomach.
Yeah.
They're going to say what everybody says and what everybody writes. So to try to get something unique, you could ask somebody totally different. Ask a child.
Sometimes we overthink it
Right.
as writers, right?
Yeah.
We're just overthinking it.
Well, I was listening to a YouTube video of Bruce Lipton. I think he's a doctor, and he was talking about a lot of stuff. It was really fascinating. But he said language was developed to hide our feelings. With that, we used to trust our feelings, and that our cells themselves have a positive and a negative energy.
Mhm.
And so the gazelle has a negative energy to the lion. It doesn't need to be told or introduced and told that this is a bad thing, so don't approach them. They have this energy field that they can read. And that humans used to have it. We used to trust our gut, but that we've gotten away from it, and that language has been used to lie about our feelings. Which I thought was kind of interesting. Relates to the words matter. And I think
right.
that's why
And then
we go
getting
to
back to the
cliche.
truth, get back in your body
Right.
and use those senses and use those, sort of those natural instincts.
Right. because because lonely is, I think, a great emotion. And if all three of us, if we were to all admit, I'm going to ask you, would you both admit, or have you both felt lonely at times in your life?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. I bet Shelley's lonely is different than Mandra's lonely. And I bet Mandra's lonely is different than my lonely. So that's why a cliche is just, it really covers up.
Right, because it's so universal.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't really want to, I'm lonely, but I don't really want to tell you what I mean by that. So I'm just going to tell you, I'm lonely, and you're going to interpret it the way you have lonely feelings, and you're going to interpret it as isolated or whatever.
Right.
Jonathan, have you ever felt lonely?
No.
I don't think you have.
I knew I could have pegged
I
his
know,
answer.
me too.
Me and all my personalities are just fine hanging out by ourselves.
I have one last phrase
Wonderful.
of words that we wanted to that I wanted to make sure got in here, and it's from someone who used to be part of our writers group, and we had read some of her stuff, and she does a really good job of describing a romantic relationship. So she's writing, and she's about to get to this part about this couple, and she writes, "You heard of gas station sandwiches? Well, that was mom and dad's relationship right there. Fast and cheap." And I was like, that was brilliant.
That was not a cliche, and that was amazing.
Yes.
Exactly. But you get that
You pegged
sense immediately of what that unromantic relationship is like when she says gas station sandwiches.
So
Cheap and easy.
one thing that my brain has always done naturally when I'm trying to turn a phrase is I often will physically turn the phrase around. And I was having a conversation with someone this morning when we came in. They were saying, "Oh, I'm very tired. I get up at 3 o'clock in the morning." And I said, "Well, I find that when I wake up in the morning, if I'm grateful for the 3 hours of sleep that I got, that I have a much better day and I don't feel as tired, and I'm open to how the day is going to come about. But if I look at it like, oh, geez, I only got 3 hours sleep,
Right.
now I'm tired and I'm anxious and I'm grumpy and cranky all day." And it works the same way with writing. If you're looking at a negative experience, you can flip that and make your phrase more positive to describe the negative emotion, and vice versa. You've got a positive emotion, you can kind of balance that out with something like a negative turn of phrase. I have no examples, don't even ask.
I was going to
Damn it,
ask.
I
'cause
know.
you know
Amanda
the
had
tip
her
of our
look.
tongue.
She had her look, and she
I
was
did.
I was like, ready. What is that
Could you give us an
example?
example, Jonathan?
So
I'm not good on the spot like that.
a lot of times he is. A lot of times I'll
Yeah.
ask him, how would you describe nervous?
Well, if I was going to use the same principle, I would say you'd want to get excitement into it, because most people perceive nervous as bad.
Okay.
So
Right.
you can use it much in the same way that Rocky did in his movies, where fear was his friend. So he was anxious or nervous, but he used that to fuel him in a positive way.
And to motivate.
Right.
Almost. Yeah.
Huh.
So that would be an interesting technique that we could go back and try out.
The positive and
flipping it.
negative. Yeah,
Yeah.
flip it around.
Yeah.
Flipping the script, I call it.
Oh, flipping the script. That
It's
would be a
not
great
really me.
title.
I didn't make that up.
No, I
It's
know.
not
That's a
flipping the
cliche.
bird.
We need
They're going to say flipping something else.
pancake.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on our Words Matter episode. Please be sure to check out the Writer's Block NH Facebook page and the Writer's Block podcast on your favorite podcast catcher. If you'd like to hear this episode again or share it with a friend, you can head on over to the UnitedPodcastNetwork.tv. That's the United Network Podcast.tv. Thank you again for listening, and we hope to inspire and empower you to tell your own story.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Café, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.